10 years ago today, I talked about Pro Skater for the very first time, kickstarting what has grown to become my largest identity on this platform, and I owe all of that to you guys for sticking around, so thank you all very much. You know, it always bugged me how old and cringy those videos were compared to everything else. You know, I was just a dumb, undiagnosed kid trying to make a name for myself. And in that time, I've talked about the entire franchise, along with all of the successes, various ports, and clones out there, but right now, obviously, we're all hyped for the upcoming remake. So I wanted to take the opportunity to just rewind and remember what this love is all about, kicking things off with the debut Tony Hawk game from 1999. The cultural significance has been thoroughly recalled through documentaries, books, interviews, and of course YouTube essays, so much to this point that I feel like there isn't really a lot to say about this game that hasn't already been said. Given that I already gave my opinions a decade ago, my goal here is simple. I just want to relive that. So I'm going to be reviewing the game today and just giving some insight based on a much more educated, mature perspective on the entire thing. Also, come back every day this week because we're doing Hawktober in April with videos dropping every 24 hours. Anyway, let's get stuck in. Created by Neversoft, one of the more dedicated and passionate teams in Activision's back pocket, authenticity was always top priority to represent the culture correctly within the gaming space. It was Birdman's goal to sell PlayStations to skaters, but of course, he probably sold more skateboards to gamers over the years. I mean, this franchise popped off for a solid 8 years through the early 2000s, which is always so funny to me when going back, because you boot the original game up and you get this clunky, primitive gameplay experience that, sure, was revolutionary at the time, but definitely hasn't aged very well. But who cares, man? The vibes are solid, levels are all instant hits, and the soundtrack punks you out with that creative rebellion which fuels the sport. Now, if you didn't know already, I'm not a skater. Never have been, just never had the legs for it, but I've always maintained a great fondness and appreciation for the medium ever since I first discovered it in my youth. Over the years, I've witnessed and been on the receiving end of much discussion regarding legitimacy of non-skaters from the real ones, but look, shared celebration of interest is what skating has always thrived on, and that's why this marriage of sport and gaming was met with so much praise during skateboarding's eruption into the mainstream. But Pro Skater wasn't the only one on the scene aware of that meteoric rise of skateboarding popularity, and as such, there were plenty of other games releasing around the same time, all vying for that top spot. Games that I've covered in the past, so if you'd like to learn more about those, then consider checking out this playlist up here to learn more. But what was it about Tony Hawk's that stood above the rest? Well, for me, it was pick up and play. Thrasher's controls, while well ahead of their time in delivering a simulation experience, delivered a simulation experience. It was much tougher getting started, you know. I've always been a firm believer in pick up and play for the average consumer, which still offers a high skill ceiling for those who desire mastery. And that just sums the game up perfectly in my opinion. Yeah, your grandma can probably 50 the warehouse rail, but can she get gold on all of the competition stages? Well, shit, can I even get gold anymore? Man, it's been a while since I played the originals of these, so safe to say I'm a bit rusty. Not to mention the game is kind of stiff after all. You gotta loosen those trucks a bit just to get Tony to even turn some corners. But it's a quick learning curve that makes the game so accessible for me, and that was the ticket to success. It just so happens that what we had access to was of such sound craftsmanship with how its various mechanics function side by side. Starting off with the basics, it's a time attack to complete your objectives of collecting and jumping around, landing some big air tricks. It's arcade action, very much unlike real-world skateboarding, but that's what makes it fun, right? Going beyond those limits of gravity has not only impressed us, but also inspired us to create tricks in the real world that emulate the insane flow of the video games. And yo, that just gets me so stoked. Being able to launch for flip tricks and grabs to make that number go up, the satisfying crunch when you stomp onto a rail or ledge for a grind as you build up your momentum, all for the reward of landing a big special trick and a high score is, at its core, what video games have always represented, which is a pretty special accomplishment for a sports game. I mean, think about it. The term sports game doesn't exactly cover the skateboarding genre now, does it? It feels almost illegal to put this next to the likes of a 2K or a Madden when their presentation styles are just so vastly different. With all skaters and non-skaters getting into these games over the years, we get to hear plenty of fresh perspectives, and one of the best that I've heard is from my buddy Petronius, who is primarily a platformer collectathon kind of guy, you know, big into Spyro, Crash Bandicoot and the like, where the core gameplay loop consists of jumping around and use of movement technology in order to reach certain objectives and pick stuff up. Just like Pro Skater. So when he, who is a newbie to the franchise, explained it like this to me, who is a lifelong veteran of these games, suddenly everything in the world just made so much sense. When the series debuted, this type of gameplay was still doing gangbusters, so regardless of a skateboarding theme, which many of these games will go on to adopt anyway, old Birdman didn't seem so out of place jumping around collecting stuff. And if it weren't for Neversoft's execution of that formula so well, then we may not still be talking about all these games 25 years later. You know, if Pro Skater deserves credit for anything, I'd say it would be as a key figure in that transition to the next generation of modern, realistic games, transitioning those time-tested foundations of the medium into what we know today. And the way everything from city street courses, purpose-built skate spaces, schools, and secret military facilities have been so seamlessly gamified for our shredding desires has always impressed me to no end. I've played games where the video game object sticks out like dog nuts so many times, so it's really refreshing just to use that instinct with how you traverse each stage, knowing that no matter what you throw yourself at, you're going to be able to succeed. There is identity on every map, from the mall to Downhill Jam, which was some of the earliest conceived stages by the way. Taking a lot of influence from earlier skateboarding games, the thought was that downhill slaloms would be the way to go, but in reality, being set free of restrictions ticked that box for authenticity. And with a cast of 10 influential skaters, all with their unique tricks, including the 900, which was apparently a very late addition to the game, and I mean, look, thank God it made it in, because some of these contests are tough without it. From the brand material plastered throughout the levels, skate videos to watch, it also serves as both a tribute and a crash course of knowledge for kids who may have been new to the scene at the time. Though if you ever played the N64 version, the lack of full motion video left you treated to a more traditional arcade attraction gameplay demo, which is still fun to see, though not quite the same. And to top it all off, this game has the perfect soundtrack. Almost. Can I just say... God, I'm probably going to get cancelled for this. I know that Superman by Goldfinger is like the iconic track from this game. But man, after doing this for 10 years and everyone adopting that sentiment, I am just so sick of that song. I'm not knocking the song, it is a banger and immediately identifiable, but man, I never want to hear it ever again. It's a great soundtrack though, featuring so many iconic songs of the scene, which would go on to become a defining staple of the franchise almost beyond the actual skateboarding itself. For me though, the Pro Skater 1 anthem has got to be Here and Now by the Ernies. Man, I could just do this forever. The original Pro Skater is a time capsule, both for skateboarding and video games. It doesn't matter if it's a short experience, much of the fun and replay value comes from the timer and the free roam, taking it at your own pace to explore and look for gaps on big obstacles. There's a reason we've replayed this one countless times again and again across multiple generations. It's because it represents simplicity executed to perfection. Look, of course they'd implement plenty of quality of life fixes over the years and continue to evolve the formula with gameplay additions that just totally transform the experience, but when looking back at the debut release, we do have to just look at what we've got here. And listen, it's a solid proof of concept. It inspired an entire fucking franchise and remained relevant well beyond its years. I mean shit, will we even still be talking about Tony Hawk if it weren't for his name becoming synonymous with the words pro skater? Now if I had any criticisms of this first game, well, they'd have to be purely age related. Not that there is anything wrong with getting old, and I feel like a lot of the guys from this game prove that by still tearing it up all these years later. But it can be frustrating at times, simply given the limited terrain on certain courses, one-directional flow on others, or just certain objectives like getting the tape on the San Francisco course being a pain in the ass. Trying to boost your special meter and maintain it while climbing up a huge building, only to get one shot at a leap of faith and struggling with it every single time. In my opinion, this was one of the worst levels of the franchise until the remake in 2020. But hey, beyond that, and perhaps just the general lack of content, of course the game is only 9 stages long, with only 5 very familiar objectives to be done on each stage, and the extensive list of unlockables wasn't quite established yet. So look, it is a sturdy foundation, but beyond that, more of a history lesson than a genuine all-time classic, if you get what I mean. Now back in the day, I gave this game a 6 out of 10, and I think I'm gonna stick with that today. The game is good, don't get me wrong, but there is definitely room for improvement in the years to come. Despite that, however, there is simply no denying the accolades and legacy this game created for itself, for Tony Hawk, and for what it kickstarted for so many of us. Whether you decided to pick up a skateboard yourself or pick up a camera just to talk about it, we all owe so much to this game. So thank you all so much for watching. I know this was a shorter episode, but having said that, be sure to tune in tomorrow when we take a look at the highly anticipated sequel. I'm Square Eye Jack, and I hope you have a great fucking day. Like, subscribe, all that good shit. I'll catch you next time.